Reptiles Magazine and reptilechannel.com. We're here with Jay Brewer, Prehistoric Pets, the Reptile Zoo in Fountain Valley, and we were very lucky today to come by when we got a nice big clutch of retic eggs hatching right here. So Jay, what kind of retics are these?
Well, these are actually dwarf retics. They're super dwarfs and they're head albino, and actually all these are going to be either albino, head albino, but every single one of them is het for anathoristic, which means it's a black pigment which makes a snow, which is really rare at this point. And so this is one of our projects to further the genetics of this particular breeding. So it's bringing in new blood and also getting what we want out of it.
How many eggs are there in this clutch?
Well, you know, it looks to me,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
he stopped writing on them at
31.
Oh, 31. Oh, I guess 31. So it seemed like that one's not, oh, there it is. So 31 eggs in this clutch. It looks like a very high success rate. These snakes here only get about 10 to 12 feet, even if they're fed pretty heavily. If you feed them lightly, they'll stay in about the 8 to 10 foot range.
How old is the clutch? How long does it take for
now this is probably about day 80 or somewhere around there. Although because it's super dwarf, what is it, 76, Tim? Probably about 76 days. Super dwarfs hatch before mainlands. Mainlands take 84 days to hatch roughly. Took us a while to figure that out. That kind of shows us what the genetics are sometimes. Didn't even know some of the things that dwarf in them, and they're hatching earlier. Like, wow, we're so confusing. We can't figure out when they're going to hatch.
Now they're cranked.
Yeah, they're actually, now here's the deal. So
yeah, they're oozing out a little bit.
In the wild, this would go ahead and there might be a couple fatalities when they hatch. This isn't the wild.
Right.
So I help them, I assist them out. So
seems kind of wild here.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. But the idea is that I actually going to help him, because like this guy could slit and break his tooth off, or this one in this egg could have actually been born without a tooth or not know how to use it correctly, or you can see this one's a lot harder than this one. So they all different hardnesses according to the humidity and all that. And so we don't want to have to let nature take its course, because we're not in nature. These are captive born, captive bred. Many generations ago, as far as I'm concerned, they're domesticated reticulated pythons, if there's such a thing, which nobody thinks there is, but I have big tame ones that I can let little kids hold.
They've been bred in captivity for decades.
Correct. And after some point, I mean, this is my about 15th or 18th year breeding reticulated pythons exclusively, and I still have stock that I've been breeding out of that are the same genetic lines that I started with. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually carefully open the eggs to increase the odds of success. And so we're going to actually, what I do is I just put a small cut in. I purposely put my finger down there, and I haven't cut a snake yet, and we're going to keep it that way. So what I do is I go ahead and I cut around, and look at that, we got an albino. 100% het for anathoristic, which is a recessive gene, just like the albino's recessive gene. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Same thing, put my finger in there, and I'm going to go ahead and cut all these eggs. Now we're not going to get anything else but these two, because the third gene is was given on one side. So these now carry the other gene, but the snake the mother of this snake didn't carry that recessive gene, anathoristic. So we're going to go ahead and keep cutting them.
So will you generally do that with all of them then?
Yeah, I prefer to always help them out of the egg, because I've had too many really beautiful snakes die in the egg just from the skin being too tough, or or the snake being a little bit weak, or something. But I've even had the little tiny ones do really, really well. I mean, they make just as good of breeders. They do fantastic, and they're sometimes we get twins. And
now, how long will they remain the way they are right now? Yeah,
they'll actually be out of this egg. They'll start crawling out in the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe even late today. Some of the ones that have slid on their own, this guy looks like he's, what happens is when they actually take the big breath of air and start breathing air, they start absorbing the yolk. So they'll absorb the yolk a little bit before, but as a rule, they finish it up after they're breathing air. So you can see some of these have a little bit higher humidity, so they're going to be a little bit more full of moisture. Depends how much they've actually taken in. When you get a clutch and they're in the original form, all stuck together, the bottom eggs will have a tendency of being a little bit flattened and smashed, and it's hard. You ought to see some of the ones that are naturally incubated look like. They look like they're dead, and out comes a little baby. It's amazing. But when they're done in captivity like this, everything's hopefully as ideal as you can get. That's why we have a a good success rate.
When
And,
will they begin feeding?
they'll feed, you know, funny enough, is reticulated pythons will sometimes feed in the first 3 to 4 days.
Yeah.
It depends how much they absorb their yolk, but typically speaking, on almost all reptiles, you usually don't even offer them food until after they shed. And
Right.
it's just because we're always trying to, you know, this is captive born and all that. Sometimes we want to start them a little bit early if we can, because, you know, the earlier they start, the sooner they come back to breeding. So, you know, I don't have a problem if a little baby wants to eat young. I try to feed them a little bit early.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get a little advantage because of that. And we're able to take back a certain gene with an unrelated female and a sooner date, because we're doing it through the younger males. Because a female has to be, you know, a female retic needs to be 3 years old is a minimum, and 4 years old is fine too. And if you know, if you don't want to have giant breeders, again, you know, it might take you 4 to 5 years to get a snake breedable. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. You know, some people don't like big snakes, but they still like the snakes so much that they really want them, and it's a way you can kind of, you know, do it. So
Now that one that you just, oh, that was the one that was open.
yeah, he didn't need to be open, but I like a big open hole. If you notice, I could just make a little cut, but I've actually done that before, you know, way back in the day, and had snakes still drowned.
Yeah.
And so I just make it where they definitely, if they drowned or they don't do well, it's because they were never meant to do well, and that's okay. But I like to make sure that I've done my part, you know, being the guy that's taken all this responsibility to hatch the eggs and all that. I prefer to follow through with what I think is the best possible success rate. And Tim here does all our breeding. And,
Tim's over there behind us. You can't see him.
yeah,
right
he's
now.
hiding.
He's over there.
He's hiding.
Keeps a
You guys
low
have to
profile.
watch. You guys have to watch the YouTube in order to see that. So now, you guys are here today, of course, because we're making some special videos.
Yeah,
And the
we're-
videos are going to be on your channel, right?
ReptileChannel.com. We're working on a care series with Jay, covering a lot of popular animals, so we'll be getting those up there as soon as we can. I don't remember if I asked you about this. What's the duration, the incubation duration?
Yeah.
Did I ask that?
Yeah, you did. They're,
I
like
forgot.
I say, if they're dwarfs, they're about 74 days, 76 days. And if they're mainlands, they're usually about 84 days. And of course, if they're crosses, numbers can get a little bit mixed up. And of course, these here are actually crosses. They're not pure super dwarf. I believe these ones are 66%, but I'm not 100% sure. Tim is still here. He's probably figuring out 62.5 percenters. So we actually keep track, because the more super dwarf that's in them, the people that are looking for the dwarfs like them.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't just put a gene in them. You can't take it. You put a new kind of snake together. It doesn't. You got to start from scratch on the dwarf part if that's what you're looking for. So I prefer mainlands myself, but hey, guess what? I'm a small percentage of my customer base, and so we sell a lot of them that aren't mainlands, that are dwarf and super dwarf.
Now,
and they're popular also.
Once these have all emerged fully from the egg, can they be kept together in a group, or do you divide them up into separate trays at that point?
Well, we keep them together as a group sometimes until they shed. It depends, but at the end of the day, it's really a nuisance to feed 2 snakes in 1 cage.
Yeah.
So we don't recommend 2 snakes in 1 cage, and definitely people that cross different continents of snakes, we don't recommend that, especially because of the different bacteria in each area can affect them differently. One snake that can live with a bacteria, the next snake it'll kill them, because one's from Africa and one's from Asia.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you didn't ask that question, but I couldn't help but give a little bit extra info. But what we got there is a nice clutch of snakes. All look healthy, all look good, and then in the next 24 hours, we expect them to start crawling out. And there's some beautiful snakes here.
All right.
They're
cool.
all purples, which means that the mother. Oh, look at that! We missed one.
Missed one.
Maybe that's the all white one. Actually had it happen, guys.
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but it had it happen when we didn't expect it, so that was pretty exciting. So, but there we go. So the idea now is they'll go ahead and they'll actually, sometimes I pop their heads out. This is a really, really strong clutch. You see right there.
Cool.
And there you go. These are all purples, which means that the mother was a hat purple, and the father we know is a purple because he's actually an albino. The mother was not an albino but carried the albino gene. But all these carry the snow gene. And don't forget, guys, make sure that whatever you do, you actually go to our web when you actually, what do you call that again? Subscribe to our station. That big button over there. That big thing in the middle of your picture that better get there. I'm telling the camera guy that. To subscribe to us so that we bring up new stuff and have new different morphs. You guys don't get left out. So you'll actually get a notification. Take care.
Thanks, Jay.